Hi, I'm Jessica. This is Aussie Wristwatch. Now, if you don't normally watch this channel and you've stumbled across me, I am a watch enthusiast. I think I'm on my way to being a collector, but I'm probably not quite there yet with the definition. But I am not a watch expert. I am self-taught, meaning I just love watches. I love going shopping for them. I love having them in my collection, and I thought I'd try and learn a little bit more about them. If you want to know what's inside this movement, what's inside this watch movement-wise, I can't tell you that off the top of the cuff. I'd have to look it up and then go and research what that actually means. So if you're here for expert advice, probably the wrong channel for you. If you're here for down-to-earth, honest discussion about a watch, this is the channel for you. Okay, so I have this really great community. I live in Sydney, Australia. And there's the Australian Watch Club, and there's another community run by a gentleman called Paxton. Hopefully he's okay with me saying his name. And Paxton puts together, I think every year, like a watch fest. And so this year, my wife and I went to the watch fest, which is like a little fair, and a whole heap of activities throughout the week prior to this fair day. And I went to the fair and I found a micro watch brand. I found this brand called the Galvin Watch Company, and it's actually an Australian watchmaker by way of Finland. And Susan Galvin is the lady's name. So she's a female watchmaker in Australia, which is, I think, maybe unheard of. If there's another one out there, shoot me a note in the comments, because we need to know who you are too. But Susan has this really great micro brand called the Galvin Watch Company. And her designs are really elegant, and they nod to her Finnish heritage. And I'll explain that in a little bit more detail in just a second. But they're micro brands, so these watches are under $1,000. And my wife and I, we really loved them. So we kept revisiting her stall, I should say, at the at the watch fest. And indeed, I did buy a watch for my wife for Christmas from there. I think I'm going to put this up after Christmas, so the secret is not spoiled. But one of her latest models that hasn't been released yet, she actually, and I haven't asked her this, but from what I can gather, she sells them through Kickstarter campaigns to get the capital to fund putting them together. So a true micro brand in that sense, very independent. And she's got this great new model that's going to come out, and I think it's going to be available in April through Kickstarter. So she's got some prototypes floating around, and she sent me one to take a look at and get hands on with. And it's a really pretty watch, very pretty. And it's called the Suvi, which is just actually a new name. So Susan sent me an email saying we couldn't land on what we were going to call the watch. We're kind of tossing a few things back and forth, and eventually we thought Suvi would be a suitable name for it. It being called the Suvi is this. And Susan actually wrote this to me in an email, so I'm kind of quoting her on this because I think it's important. But it's an Old Finnish word, and it stands for that stands for summer. Now, the colours of the dial are inspired by Finnish nature over the summertime. And Finnish summer was the source of the inspiration for this collection, but choosing the right name took her quite some time. She thought given the vintage flair of the Breguet numerals on it, kind of suited the whole aesthetic of the watch. The blue dial on the watch that I have is inspired by the thousands of lakes that they've got in Finland. The green dial pays homage to the green nature of the birch forests, and the beige dial is inspired by the barley fields. Now, Susan goes on to say that she lived her childhood in the rural north of Finland. So she was surrounded by all of these elements in the summertime, which I think is fantastic. And for those of you who live in Australia, I think you're going to understand what I'm talking about. But summer in Australia is very special and very, I guess, unique. Summertime for us is the end of the year, so it's now. So summertime, Christmas is summertime for us. It's the complete opposite of the Northern Hemisphere. And it's sand, it's surf, it's beach. at least for me, and a lot of other people. And we are water babies, 100%. We get thrown in the water almost at birth to learn to swim. So there's something about like that whole nature element that Susan talks about in Finland that kind of, for me, evoked these images of our summertime here in Australia. It's very much the smell of the suntan lotion, the grittiness of the sand at the beach, the crispness of the bush, which is everywhere here. You don't have to drive hours out of Sydney to get to the bush. It's literally where water and ocean meet is bushland. It's quite spectacular. So I kind of just had these images, and Susan, as lovely as she is, actually sent me some images of what she was talking about, which I'll pop up too. But I just love the inspiration of that. So like she has another watch which I will review as well at a later point, and that's inspired by the Northern Lights. And you can really see that. She's kind of got like this guilloche dial happening with that watch, which is spectacular. It's the reason that I had to get it. My wife fell in love with it. But this one is super class. It's a tonneau, I think is how you pronounce it, shape. So it's that classic kind of, well, who's made this famous right now? Richard Mille, and before him, Frank Muller. So now Susan Galvin. But in a far more simplistic and elegant looking watch, I must say. So what Susan does is she, as do a lot of micro brands, to keep cost down, because you can't make an in-house movement without, let's face it, having oodles of money and R&D behind you. She takes a Miyota, she takes a Miyota 9039 caliber, and it has a customized rotor, which greater minds than me will understand that better. But there's the open display case back on this watch, and it's still a very pretty watch to look at. And there's a lot of Galvin touches still in this watch. It's not just off the shelf, wham bam, thank you ma'am, away you go. She's taken the time, care and effort to kind of put her own stamp on the watch. Actual specifications for this watch, for those of you who love that, diameter is 33 mil by 40 mil. It's an 11.5 mil thickness, so it is quite thick, but because of the curve and the shape of the watch, it molds to your wrist very nicely. Lug width is 19 mil, lug to lug 46. It's a domed sapphire crystal with an anti-reflective coating. As I mentioned, it's a Miyota 9039 caliber movement. Sandblasted cases, case back brushed and partially polished. It's 5 ATM water resistant, and the filled crowns match the dial color. The thing about this watch is it's very simple. It's you could almost say it's very plain. But if you look at it closely, there's a lot of care and attention to detail that actually goes into it. The dial, and I'm not going to get this terminology right because it's not what I'm about, but I'll two-tone to the dial in terms of what's going on there with brushed, and you can see the lake in this watch is what I'm trying to say. It feels like you can see the shore and then the lake in the middle of this watch in some respects. The numerals on this watch are so beautiful. I love them. I think she called it Breguet. Well, I love Breguet. If that's what Breguet is, I'm a new fan. At the 12, 3, 6 and 9 o'clock. The hands are very delicate, which add to sort of just the class and the simplistic nature of this watch. I mean, simple doesn't mean boring, I should say. Simple means, me on this watch, an elegance. Would I wear this watch? I actually would. I love my Fears Archival 1930, which is smaller, but it's that same kind of elegant look and feel. It's rectangular, that one. I know this is tonneau, but it's kind of like a rounded rectangular, I guess, if you want to be a bit crude about it. And I really enjoy that. I mean, it's not my everyday kind of watch, just to be clear, but to wear it for a special occasion, for sure. I probably obviously would change the strap, but this is a prototype. Like, many people have worn this, really giving the full feel and aesthetic to it that you could have. I think like a suede navy blue strap on this would be quite beautiful, or even like a darker, maybe an alligator brown leather would look really spectacular with the blue. I don't know if that's an option. It probably isn't. I actually mentioned to Susan too, her Northern Lights gear shade dial, that in this could be epic as like down the track model. But I'm just really excited about actually finding a female watchmaker in Australia. I'm a lawyer by trade, so to speak. I worked for a really big manufacturing company for a very long time, which was kind of blokey. Getting better obviously over time, but very male dominated, and the watch industry is kind of like that. There's nothing wrong with that, it just is by virtue of how it's been, I guess. So it's nice to find fellow watch lovers who are female. Not that there's anything wrong with the guys, but it's kind of nice to just have a little bit of diversity. And so to find a female watchmaker, I feel that's also very rare. It's like anyone in STEM. Getting females into STEM, difficult. So I think you have to support those people. And, you know, so I wanted to make a conscious effort to do that with Susan, hence buying one of her watches, supporting her here on the channel. You know, and I wouldn't support her if her product was rubbish. So cool to see a female watchmaker in Australia, in Sydney, and I just was really excited by that. She has another model, I think 3 models or something like that on her website. Check it out, the Galvin Watch Co. Check out this watch on Kickstarter. I think it's coming around April, as I said. You know, if you're into a tonneau shaped watch and something that's very pretty and elegant for a sub $1,000, I don't know what the exact price is going to be, but it's probably going to, her other watches I think sit around the 600 or 700 mark, which to be honest with you, I think is a pretty good price in this current day and age with inflation for a very micro brand watch. You know, he's kind of sitting around the Den Henry mark, because Dan's about 350-ish US, so that's, what's that, like 500-600 Australian. The exchange rate is horrible. Galvin Watch Co is in Australian dollars, so when I'm telling you it's like $600 odd for one of her watches, you guys, it's much less if you're talking pound, euro or USD. But I am grateful and thank you, Susan, for lending me this watch to have a look at. I knew I really liked it at the watch fair. Good on you, Paxton, for organising. I don't know how that worked, but you can take the credit for that. But, you know, for introducing us to another, you know, Aussie watch brand that's making something different and elegant and within their own style aesthetic, which I really like. You know, I think that's the thing with what I've found with, well, maybe every micro brand for that matter, but Aussie micro brands that I've found, like Panzera has a very particular style. Bozell has a very particular style. I like that. I like that they're, you know, making their own mark with their own version of the watch that they love. I think that's very cool. And so Susan's making watches that nod back to her heritage in Finland. I love that. I think it's awesome. And I just it resonated with me just about being out in nature and all of that, and having a watch that kind of reflects that in some way, and the thought that's gone into that, I think is a great story. And I really enjoyed it. But yeah, check them out. I know if you're not in Australia, it's a bit harder to do, but at least check out her website. Have a look at the past models she's made. You'll get a feel for her style, her aesthetic, what she's going for there. And if you think it's for you, well, why don't you just shoot her an email and have a chat to her about them. Thank you for watching. If you've experienced Galvin Watch Company, if you have one of their watches, let us know in the comments how you feel about that. Like, subscribe, do all those things. Until next time, guys, have a fabulous week.